All right, hi. So let me introduce myself. Um, so you know my name. I'm Bob Eckhart,
Yes.
and I'm in Columbus, Ohio. So
Yes.
this is the Eastern Time Zone. It's 9:20 in the morning here. We are in the same time zone as New York, and we're
Wow.
halfway between New York and Chicago, just to get a geographical reference.
Wow.
Where are you?
I'm in Zimbabwe, Harare. So it's three? No, it's four. 20 past four my time. So the capital of Zimbabwe.
Okay. All right. Great. Good. Well, I've never been there, but I hope to go someday.
Please do come down. We would love to have you. I've avidly followed your your engagement with Professors Without Borders, and every single time I have a cohort coming up, I'm like, I'm hoping Bob is there. I'm hoping Bob is there. I think for me, one of the best parts of participating in this whole program has been I've learned so much. I cannot put a value on the education I've received from other professors and the
Yeah.
personal and professional growth it's given me. It's been
Yeah.
amazing. So yours,
Um,
I'd definitely love to sit in on one of your classes.
okay. Hopefully next year. Just by any chance, do you know Mutsa? Have
Yes,
you
I
worked with Mutsa?
do. I know Mutsa, I know Sana, um, I know Eliza, and I never got to meet Rachel, but we both worked at ALU. So there was a whole cohort of ALU alumni that had a network. But Mutsa and Sana, I even got to meet Mutsa in person and spend time with her in South Africa via Sana. She's an amazing, amazing
Okay.
human.
So my wife and I taught with her on a program at African Rural University.
Oh wow.
And so I get what you say. Like, part of the real value of this is the interactions and the learning and the growth you have with the other teachers. So
Yeah,
okay,
that's
all right.
cool.
Well, let me like make some official welcome to the podcast. And I don't know. Tenzin said maybe you do podcasts. This is the first time I've ever done anything like hosting a podcast. So, welcome to anyone who listens to this. We could just call this a coffee chat.
Yeah.
I I did have the idea for this, I guess, mainly because I was following so closely the journeys that other professors have when they do programs, and I'm just super curious. I'm a curious guy. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what your experiences are, and also I thought it would be valuable to have an archive of these conversations.
Mm,
So, I've been to certain universities, you've been to certain universities. If we run programs there with other professors, they can watch them and listen to them and have a better sense of what we did so that they can build on that, and so that they will have learned from what we did. And so everybody's not reinventing the wheel.
yeah.
Okay, all right, great. So, um, can you tell us just real quick a little bit about your? Well, okay. So, how did you get involved with Professors Without Borders? How did you come into the family?
So, I'm an educator by profession, and that is extended into ed tech and student recruitment for higher education. One of my first forays into the field was with African Leadership University. So I hosted a mental well-being session for first year students under wellness with Sana Adi Mohammed. And she was so impressed with the session, and the students were so excited about it that when she went on Professors Without Borders. I think her two stops, as far as I know for now, were Eswatini and Uganda. She heard about a program for India for young ladies, and it was dealing with mental well-being. And because of the session I'd hosted for her first year students, she said, "You know what? I think you'd actually be a perfect fit for this." And I got on a call with Rachel, and I think it's safe to say the rest is history thereafter.
Okay, and when was that exactly? So this is November 2024. So when was that?
So that would have been July 2023. July 2023. The initial trip to India was in August 2024, 2023, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so just
Over a
over
year.
a little over a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah. A
And,
little
and
over a year ago.
and in that little over a year, how many programs have you done?
4.
Okay, and let's just list them real quick.
So the first one was in India. The second
Okay.
one was in Zimbabwe, so my home country. The third was in Kenya, and the last one, which was in September, was in Uganda.
Okay. Wow. Wonderful. So is it safe to say that working with volunteering with Professors
Yeah,
Without Borders has really changed your life, sort of changed your career a little bit?
so much more than I would care to admit. Um, I remember the first visit to India. That was life-changing. So first and foremost, when it comes to the partners that you engage with, from the actual schools to your hosts, they're so welcoming. I am an Indian cinephile. I love Indian movies and shows, and it's very big in Southern Africa because of, the South Africa connection, Durban. That's the one place outside of India with the greatest Indian population. So we get a lot of shows. So when I got to go to India, I was blown away, and I was, citing stars and actors that my mom and I would watch. So there was so much excitement. But what I found so interesting about that was there was such a rush of culture and immersion in something completely new and novel, but there was such a baseline of humanity and shared experience that elevated me as an educator. Initially, I just thought, being an educator relates to being able to share a concept with your students, give them critical thinking skills, and help them to make decisions. By the time that trip was done, my definition of an educator was someone who could cross borders, cultural contexts, and barriers, societal barriers, to find shared commonality and human experiences and expression. I completely started reevaluating my life and my trajectory and my career path after that. And it was on the basis of the shared struggles that you'll find across the board. So people assume that when you volunteer, you're basically going to go and talk about your subject matter, what it is you teach. And that is true. That is the baseline of it. There are shared skills and, knowledge transfer that takes place, but it's mostly about the connection with another human being in another space, in another context, and finding shared ground for mutual exchange of information and experience. So it 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 propelled me into actually reevaluating my career choices at the time, and got me back into the ed tech space, because I was challenged by the young women who were against patriarchy, against societal expectations. They were fighting to find themselves, to self actualize. And even within the space of the school itself, it was an all female, all women staff. And you could sense the rich tradition and the rich history. And I cannot put it into words just how amazing it
Okay.
was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this was the India program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And what was it, 1 week or 2 weeks?
It was 1 week. So literally we arrived, I think it was on Saturday. We got to rest on Sunday. Monday to Friday the next week, we packed everything in, and that
Okay.
was the session. Yeah.
And let's just go through the specifics a little bit for people who
Yeah.
might be doing their first program. How many hours a day were you in direct contact with the program participants, the students?
Yeah. So what happened was I had a partner, a co-facilitator, Sanedi Siwe. And so we each had an hour with two groups of girls. So we'd work 2 hours, and we'd have one group and the next group. Initially, I think we did that for the first 2 days, and then we found that there was lack of continuity across the groups. So what we would then do was we'd have 1 hour dedicated to her session, and she'd have the whole group. we'd have the second hour dedicated to my session, and we'd have the whole group. So there's a sense of, even though you'll go with a set plan in mind, be open to changes and be flexible. So
Yeah.
that was how we worked and structured it. So yeah.
So you reinvented your program design on the fly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Based
Okay.
on,
And was it just the two of you there, or was there anybody from ProWebo who was accompanying you?
no, it was the two of us that time, just the two of us. So
Okay.
we,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is okay. So I'm a program design guy. I've been doing
yeah,
international programs for 20 years,
mm,
and um, you know, program design people design the program
yeah,
before the program, and
yeah,
then they're not. In this case, they're not always there. And
yeah,
so, did you? So I'm thrilled that you redesigned your program.
yeah.
Did the two of you, like, do you think you were both kind of thinking this in the back of your minds, and then one of you said, hey, maybe we should redesign the program? How did the program redesign happen? And did you feel empowered to do it on your own, or did you feel like you had to call back to Tenzin or Rachel or Eliza and get permission?
Oh no, no such restrictions. There was great autonomy within the set guideline, and as a program designer, I'm sure that the main objective is to create a set and solid boundary where you can then have, you know, the relevant elements interacting autonomously to create something within a set framework. That is exactly what happened. So when we even arrived, we had time to rest, and then we got into a discussion of, okay, so what are you discussing, what am I discussing?
Yeah.
And we shared material, and once that was done, we realized there was actual synergy in our session. So even before we had the swap of structure, we were actively saying, okay, so this flows into your session, this flows into mine, and there was great autonomy and freedom to do so. When we saw that things weren't working, we then, because you had already established, you know, open communication, went back to the drawing board and said, how best can we work this out? So it seems a bit, you know, on, if you're not experienced and used to it, and you know you really are finicky about structure to the T, it might throw you off a bit, but it's quite fun, you know, when you get into the flow of
Yeah,
things.
I do know this, and I would be very comfortable doing this, but
Yeah,
and when I did my conversation with Tenzin, I guess one of the keys, I think, to this program success is flexibility,
yeah,
being and adaptability, and
hmm,
being able to do what they say, building the plane as you fly it.
yes, yes,
You're there, you're like, you start flying the plane, but you're kind of building it as you go.
yeah,
And you're right, like, not everybody will be comfortable with this. Like,
mm,
um the first program I did at the University of Lagos,
yeah,
um there were so many variables
mm,
that just couldn't be accounted for, and can't be accounted for until you get there. And
yeah,
yeah, specifically with the learning space, is
mm,
there going to be a computer, or do I bring my own? Is there going to be a
yes,
projector? And at the University of Lagos the first time, not only was there no computer and no projector, there was no electricity.
yeah.
So like, but for me, those are just kind of interesting obstacles to overcome.
Yeah,
But I can imagine, and I don't want to say anything bad about it, but I can imagine some people, like, not being as adaptable or flexible. And so, yeah, but I hadn't really heard of somebody redesigning their program on day three. So that's great. Bravo.
and you know, I think I genuinely I understand what you're saying. I think because living in the African context, if you've watched the movie Encanto, there's a reference to a character called Bruno, and there's a classic song where they say we don't talk about Bruno. That's literally our situation when it comes to electricity. Whenever we have a thunderstorm, everyone low key says, don't talk about Bruno, but do what you need to do. If there's a thunderstorm, you know you need to charge and you need to get everything sorted out. Don't say it lest you
Yeah.
jinx it and it goes. So, you know, things like that are so true on the ground. I remember when we arrived on ground, we thought that we'd have two projectors because we both had, PowerPoint projectors and presentations and everything. We had one projector, and we had a situation, I think mid session, where electricity was gone. And so, mid session, you now have to work on, okay, we now have to keep the kids engaged and the students elevated and engaging with the
Mhm.
content. So at times we'd have to go outside and say, all right, we're going to have a little break and we're going to rework this exercise outside of electricity. We still need to get this done. How best do we work? So it's a great creative challenge for you as
Yeah,
an educator and a facilitator. It's quite fun in that sense.
and what about the cooperation and collaboration with the local hosts? You know,
Yeah.
were they advising you? Were they observing? Were they participating and helping? What was their level of engagement with you?
So I've noticed that it varies from location to location. In India, they basically stated, right, here are the students, this is your provision. Please feel free to do what you need to do. And they continued with their administrative tasks. And I think that was by virtue of having worked with Professors Without Borders for a very long time. They had an established and solid working relationship. So the system was already in place, and there's a sense of trust. I noticed in Uganda at Aru, African Rural University, the staff, the faculty, even the vice chancellor actively participated in sessions. And it wasn't necessarily a factor of trust, but rather because of the learning culture of the institution. So it varies from place to place and
Mhm.
from institution to institution, and also based on the culture thereafter. In some regions, it's seemingly rude to then step in on another lecturer's class and to engage. And in some areas, they're more open and flexible, and there's greater room for collaboration and discussion. I think I saw it most in Uganda, definitely most in Uganda.
Okay, and I was also there in Uganda, so I can sort of like
Yeah,
imagine that. But let's stick with India because I think that's
yeah,
really
yeah.
interesting. And what
Okay.
about like your housing and your meals? You know, like and the logistics. I mean, we could even start with like, did they pick you up at the airport? Did everything run smoothly? Did you get a SIM card?
Okay. So yes, we were picked up at the airport. Right at the exit gate, we had our professors from the college waiting with a sign and a placard with our names. And so from the very get-go, we were picked up. Our host, Nishi Malhotra, was an amazing woman. She made us feel so comfortable. Um, she took us through, I guess, the spectrum of Indian culture and cuisine in our entire space and time there. So she'd make an effort to make sure our meals were amazing, but also she'd give us the backstory behind it. And she'd say, right, today, is there anything that you'd like to have? Or, give us the history of a particular dessert. So we had foods from all over India, from the safety and comfort of our home. But she also took us on tours, because you'll be working most of the day, you'll come back, you're resting, you're prepping for the next day. There is time and space for, sightseeing, but not so much. But she made sure that in the space and the time that we did have, she would pack it full of, monuments and sites um, you know, that were central to the heart of Lucknow, India, which is where we were. Um, that I found very amazing in terms of the staff as well. When we would have our tea breaks, they'd invite us into the staff room and we'd have conversations, get to hear about how they were doing and what they were doing. We didn't get as much time to engage and interact because it was during their examination season at the time.
Okay, okay.
But there was some engagement and a lot of support.
Okay, good. All right. And then, okay, so this was just your first program. This
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
India. Okay, and I don't know, let's just talk real quickly. What was your second program?
The second one was in Zimbabwe.
Okay. Oh,
So
okay,
back.
okay. So that was it in your same city? Did you stay at home or did you travel to another city and campus and stay there?
So this was in Harare. I traveled from home, which was Bulawayo, and then I came to Harare, and we all stayed in a shared housing. And so it was moving from home, small town, to
Okay.
the big city.
Okay. Okay. All right. And what was the nature of that program in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, we were engaging with two universities, Women's University of Zimbabwe and Catholic University. And we had a whole cohort. I think that was the first time I actually got to engage with Professors Without Borders teammates and staff. So we had Eliza Sims, we had Stacey Garwe, and we had Justina Slominska. And we were basically, it was like a holistic youth package of empowerment. So we had discussion about professional development for your LinkedIn, how do you build your CV, your resume, financial literacy. I came in with mental well-being and self-regulation, as well as coping strategies. And that was, the whole team. I think in a nutshell, that experience was very interesting because it was a cross-collaborative effort. So Stacey and I, being, Zimbabwean, had the Zimbabwean context and information, and yet you had Eliza and Justina with the expertise and the growth of this is where you are, but this is where you need to go. So there was a cross collaboration which was so beautiful and seamless in the way that there was learning across the board. So I thoroughly enjoyed that whole
Okay.
course, and that's when I was taking notes, copious amounts of notes. In and among the students, I was learning as well.
Okay, great. And were those university was that a university collaboration?
Um, University collaboration as in with the staff as well, or just the students, or
Who were your participants? Were they university
ah,
students?
yes, university students were our
Okay.
participants. Yeah.
Okay. 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 All right. And so you got to be part of the team and you got to meet Stacy and Eliza
Yeah,
and that's a big part of it. Okay.
definitely.
And then program number 3.
This was Kenya. So Kenya, again, I was looking at mental well-being, self-regulation, and I had a young man, Witness Lamini. He was looking at financial knowledge and literacy, budgeting as well. And then I had Eve Mapande, who was looking at holistic self-development. So not just self-regulation, but holistic self-development and breaking through childhood and youth trauma. So we were an interesting dynamic duo of three. And because Eve was more than hospitable enough to let us stay in her home, we would have morning powwows, getting ready for the day, and in the evening after the sessions we'd get to sit down, have a meal, discuss the day's events. It was very cozy, and it was
I,
very like a home
okay.
situation. Yeah.
And was that 1 week?
Yes. Similar to India, it was like a Monday to Friday
Okay.
situation.
And
Yeah.
okay, and when you say cozy, obviously I can see the smile in your face, but for some people that might be a little too cozy, like you wouldn't get any
Yeah.
downtime or separation from your work and your team, but that wasn't
And
the case.
so I we did have downtime. So for example, in the evenings we'd have time, we'd basically just have a debrief, very short debrief, and then each of us would go to our respective rooms. You could stay outside, you could relax, you could, or you could, go and stay in your space and relax and rest. I find it cozy, and what I quite enjoy about it was the emphasis on the way Eve opened up her home and her mom's home, and the space that they shared. They had puppies. I think it was day 2. I was washing puppies because I missed my dog back home. And it was, there was so most people would say, but you've come into our space, and this is our space. There'd be that sense of boundary and that sense of offense in the event that it would happen. They were so open, they were so free, and they gave us an opportunity to be part of their family. And that is a very rare experience. And
Yeah.
again, with the connection, I every time I go on LinkedIn, or every second day, I get messages, and I still keep in touch with Eve and, Sylvia, because it was just such an affirming experience. And I think the baseline of that was we all knew that we were there to impact and change the lives of young people. So there's a certain level of connection and vulnerability that comes with that, that opens you up for deep and real human connection, which is something
Mhm.
I have yet to see in other instances of volunteering. This has been, like I said, very transformative. So it's
Okay.
it's definitely a plus if you're open to it.
Okay. And speaking of like staying connected to people, because I'm still connected to the people I teach with. Are you still
Yeah.
connected to any of the students from the
Yes.
programs?
Yes. It's actually quite funny. One of my students from Kenya had a birthday on, was it Monday? And we came across the happy coincidence that it was also my sister's birthday. So um, I think the groups that have been most actively engaged in maintaining contact would be, well, all of them. It's just the one or two students that'll come across that will maintain that connection. But I do have students that still talk to me, and I still reach out. And for many of them, one of the discussion points we had was, creating a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah,
So whenever they post, they'll, send me a message, and they'll say, "Ma'am, did you see that I posted? What do you think?" So it's you get to be an in situ
good.
parent. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're open to that,
Yeah.
because I mean, I guess I've taken hundreds of teachers to places like China and Turkey and
Yeah.
Indonesia, and some teachers seem to have that sort of open heart and space in their lives.
Yeah.
You're making space in your life for the other teachers and for the
Yeah.
students, but not everybody has that space available. And so
Yeah.
I think it's a really great thing that you do. And so this will kind of get us to Uganda,
Yeah.
um, because aren't those women graduating this week? Like,
Yes, yes, I saw they're prepping for their graduations. I think that would have been the cohort that you met. I had first
yeah,
years and second years.
my wife is still in touch with them, and
Oh,
even a couple weeks ago, she had me looking at plane tickets to Uganda because she wanted to go to Uganda to the
yes,
graduation. And you're in America and you take a couple flights to get to Uganda and then the 4 hour Range Rover
yes.
ride and I wanted to do it. She wanted to do it. Like she really is carrying a lot of
Mm,
that experience in her heart still. They have a group
mm.
chat. They have a
Yeah,
group chat that is still active 2 years later. And
yeah.
um and so I mean listen, like I was interested. I was looking at plane tickets. This is how kind of connected you can become. I guess,
Yeah.
okay, so we were at Aru for 2 weeks. And so
Mm,
okay, you can be a little more connected in 2 weeks, but I think even if we had only been there 1 week, we still would have made those real connections.
yeah.
But okay, and so were you there for 1 week or 2 weeks?
I was there for 2 weeks. So it was
And you
the,
lived
yeah.
in one of the huts?
Yes, yes.
Were the
Oh
were the
man.
monkeys were the monkeys
Yes,
still around? And
yes,
what
they
about
were.
did the cows like walk through like when we had our
No,
dining table, like the cows every once in a while the cows would come through doing what cows
no.
do.
Yeah, no, we didn't have the cows. I think we found the residue of what cows do, but we
Uh,
never actually got to see them. I think it was because it was raining heavily at the time. But definitely we had the huts, we had the monkeys and the scenic view, we had the forestry. I think
yeah,
you can't underestimate the experience of being in some place new, and
yeah.
the forestry and the green of Uganda is amazing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
a it's a it's a green belt,
Yeah.
it's a protected ecological area. And I still remember those birds, those big, huge birds that like
Yes.
whoosh, whoosh. It sounded like
Yes.
a helicopter when those birds would fly over.
Yeah,
Like they're not
and even,
sneaking up on anybody.
yep, not sneaking up on anyone. Oh,
All right. So what did you do? What did you do at Aru in Uganda? What was your
so
program?
at Aru, I was looking at change agency, so advocacy through championing change. And it was basically discussions around how you can implement change and self-development within yourself and then have that ripple out to your community, how you can then get buy-in from community members and effect and inspire change around you. That was quite interesting, and I remember there were quite a bit of discussions because of how it flowed into the very mandate of Aru and what they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an
What an
experience.
unbelievable place. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we might have to have that an entire conversation with maybe with all the people who've been to Aru, but
Yes. Yes.
I think we should wrap it up, and I want to thank you. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you'd really like to mention before we sign off about any of your experiences with ProEvo?
I think the only thing I'd say is that even if you're not one who is open to flexibility and you are a very structured facilitator and educator, I would still invite you to try and engage in this program because there's such potential for self-discovery, self-mastery, development and growth. And it's not a one size fits all. The very varied nature of facilitators I've come across has spoken to the varied nature of the student body that we also engage with. So I hope that it doesn't eliminate, people don't eliminate themselves as potential candidates, because there's always something that you can impart to a young student, and there's always a student who needs to see and hear and share your particular experience, your particular voice. And that's what I've found interesting. Some of the students will reach out to a particular, co-facilitator, won't necessarily reach out to me, but the value has still been gained and shared. Young people across the globe need to be empowered. They cannot mirror what they have not seen. So something that you are bringing to the table will surely change your life.
Okay, bravo! What a great place to stop. Thank you so much for your time and
Thank you.